Yeah, you're absolutely correct. If any candidate does not have any political party behind him or her, whatever promises you make, that's just saliva. I don't know, because it's the political party which will make things happen. Diba?
Yes, ma'am. Absolutely agree.
Well, I'm an educator, and I have been teaching for the past 55 years. I started teaching when I was 20, so I'm 75 now. So education is really so pivotal to my professional life. The empirical evidence suggests to us that effective learning happens on the basis of two factors. First, the mastery of the subject matter by the teacher, and two, a fairly high level of motivation by the student, and they are interacting. Therefore, if you want to do any policy changes, that means you pay attention and you invest on the teacher. Do not invest on air-conditioned rooms, classrooms, etc., because these things can happen even under the papaya tree. But if the teacher is bobo, no learning happens. So that means if you have limited number of pesos, put it on the training of teachers. Okay, the other part, and I was triggered by the question of Dante here, is yes, a legislation which is going through the legislative mill in regard to empowering the CHED. Why in heaven's name did we divide our education system into a DepEd, K-12, a CHED, and kung bobo ka, diyan ka na lang sa BOCTEC, ha? No? I remember, ang uncle ko sabi niya dun sa isang bobo kong pinsan, ay nako kasi mahina naman ulo mo, mag-teacher ka na lang kaya o mag-military. Oh my God! Yung bobo yung gagawing teacher, no? So, education is so pivotal to the life of our nation. So, you as chief executives, I would plead that you pay attention to empirical evidence. The critical variable for effective learning to happen is to invest on the teacher. Thank you.
Yes. So is there a question that you'd want them to address? Or
well, Karen, I'm really leading to what Dante said. You need an EDCOM too. Kasi yung EDCOM 1 ang nagganyan yan nag-divide yan sa tatlo. Why they divided that? I don't know. There's something so brainless about this division.
First question will be coming from UP Professor Dr. Clarita Carlos.
Thank you, Karen. Okay, again, my question will be on defense and security. It's well known that Russia has indicated many times that it wants to train and exercise with our Philippine military. As a matter of fact, for the first time, it appointed a defense attaché at the Russian embassy here in Manila. This will, of course, require a status of forces agreement like what we have with the US and Australia. As our future chief executive, will you agree to a status of forces agreement with Russia?
Well, yes, we would have to look into what the status of forces agreement actually entails to our two countries between Russia and the Philippines, for the simple reason that it is an entirely novel concept for our two countries together. However, again, if we can see that there's an advantage to the Philippines for that, but you see, this is part of the effort that you, Professor, mentioned, that the superpowers are carving out against their spheres of influence. And in the same way, as I spoke to you about the last question that concerned that, I do not think the spheres of influence model of the Cold War still applies. So we should be very wary of that. As a practical matter, if we are to train with all of those countries, then we could have a real logistical problem in our military, because the training is usually the beginnings of their hopefully supplying, or hopefully for the donor country, supplying us with military equipment. And so yes, it is good perhaps that we see what the different doctrine, that I'm talking doctrine and military doctrines are. But I think we still have to decide at some point, and what they, as the engineers call it, we have to freeze the design of our military and say we have decided to go with these pieces of equipment and with this military doctrine. That's with those who we have
Senator
trained
Marcos, time's up.
Yeah, as an adjunct to your remarks, shouldn't we also abolish the AFP as it is configured presently? Because, you know, that was designed during the American occupation. Because we have new security interests, and therefore the doctrinal framework will also follow through. If you abolish the AFP, and as you have indicated, as four of you have indicated earlier, that it is really the sea which needs to be protected. And yet, you know, the bulk of your AFP consists of the army, which is running after insurgency, which is not its mandate, by the way. So shouldn't you be abolishing the AFP and putting a little bit more manpower and equipment on the Marines and the Navy,
Well,
as you have articulated earlier?
That is a question for our military planners and thinkers as to how which branch of the military should be beefed up, should be strengthened.
But you will be the
however-
potential commander-in-chief of the Republic.
Precisely.
So that
So-
decision will really be on your desk,
Yes,
not
it
on
will.
the AFP.
Yes, it will. And we will look at the situation at the time that these are being proposed. But again, we have to go back to the very practical matter of how our military operates. I cannot see how the Philippines will continue to exist if we do not have the AFP. And therefore, the idea of abolishing the AFP might be a logical conclusion, but it is not a practical one.
Yeah, on a personal note, I wrote a paper on abolishing the AFP, and I'm sure I got so many enemies. But yes, if you're interested to read that paper, I can share it with you.
Yes, please, ma'am. I would be very, very interested.
Yes. I can see Professor Carlos raising her hand. Any follow-up questions, Professor?
Well, susog lang dun sa tinuran ni Bert Gonzales at saka ni Leody de Guzman, no? Actually, yung gusto niyong proposal that the government will pay for your radio, TV time, and, you know, your tarpaulins, etc., that can only happen when you shift our parliamentary system, where the political party becomes the pivot of our political life. Outside of that, talagang kailangan magkalkal ka ng sarili mong salapi. And you know the implication when you do that, diba? So let's shift our parliamentary system. Unfortunately, not one of my colleagues here, including myself, have asked about that because we were limited to 2 questions. So what can we do?
Dadagdag ko lang sa that the professor said na dapat parliamentary system, dahil pag parliamentary system, multi-party system, ang partido ang talagang namumuno at talagang nagpapatakbo ng halalan para sa kanyang mga kandidato. Idadagdag ko na rin doon, baka yung two-party system doon. Dahil pag two-party system tayo, partido talaga. Pag sinabi, nung dati LP, NP, may machinery sila. May talagang machinery. Sila ang gumagalaw at sila ang nagdadala sa kanilang mga kandidato. Kaya siguro, dapat nating tignan kung paano, kung nais natin iwasan itong sistema natin na 10 pesos per voter, 5 pesos sa partido, ay kung nais natin maiwasan yan, patibayin natin ang bahagi na ginagampanan ng ating mga partido sa mga halalan.
Yeah.
Organisa ng Presidential Debate 2022.
1 to 10, it's a 12.
Lagpas pa sa inaasahang grado ang ibinigay ng isa sa mga batikang abogado sa bansa na si Attorney Trixie Angeles. Isa si Angeles sa daan-daang naimbitahang manood sa isinagawang kauna-unahang live presidential debate sa bansa na pinangsiwaan ng Sunshine Media Network International, katuwang ang ALV Events at Okada Manila. Paliwanag ng abogado sa Smni, may kaunting kabasang naramdaman nung umpisa dahil sa hindi pagdalo ng ibang mga kandidato sa nasabing debate. Ngunit aminado siyang nagkamali siya ng inaakala.
Number one, yung absence ng ilang mga kandidato didn't bode very well sa umpisa. Parang siya, strategic siya. Pero pleasantly surprised, dumating yung ibang mga kandidato and this became a far more intellectual, far more meaningful discourse. Na nakikita natin, lumalalim yung diskurso, umaabot dun sa punto na pinipilit rin kasi ng panelists natin na polisiya, plano, specifics. Nakikita natin, talagang on the firing line sila. Medyo luto yung ating mga kandidato.
Humanga rin si Angeles dahil sa kabila ng limitadong oras, nagawa pa rin nilang maitawid ang kanilang plataporma.
Maikli yung oras. Pero dahil sa dami din ng tanong, lumalawak at saka lumalapad yung pagkakataon nila na mag-explain. Ngayon, nakikita din natin, may pagkakataon din na natututo yung audience. May mga konsepto na naririnig sila for the first time, yung issues about justice and rebellion, foreign policy, mga ganyan. So nakita natin that this actually delivered far more than it promised. So ganito dapat ang diskurso, ganito dapat yung debate. It's not exactly a debate, but pagkakataon siya para mas lumawak yung kaalaman ng mga botante na pupunta sa polls this May 9.
Samantala, marami ang nanghinayang sa ginawang pang-iisnab ng ibang politiko para dumalo sa nasabing debate.
Siyempre, oo nga, dapat. Akala ko kompleto. Pero kung hindi kompleto, sayang yung opportunity nila, di ba? Ako naman, nakikita ko na magandang opportunity. Tsaka malakas ang coverage ng SMNI, di ba?
My own reaction to that would be that, on the one hand, it would have been good for them to be here. But on the other hand, we'll have a better chance to explore the issues because we just have two. And we feel that Calyodi will be able to have a lot more time to explain to the electorate why he deserves to be the next president of the Philippines.
It's their choice, di ba? We have no choice. Baka sila yan, they have their own reason why did not attend yung apat na candidates natin. But it's sayang, this is the best platform that they can showcase their economic platforms, their showcase yung kanilang mga layunin nila, bakit sila tumatakbo bilang presidente ng Pilipinas. At doon mo rin makikita, because this is the first national debate. And dito mo makikita kung sino talaga ang karapat-dapat na maging presidente ng Pilipinas. At I'm so glad and I'm so honored na yung apat na natira. Itong of course, ang ating Senator Marcos, si Calyodi, si Norberto Gonzales, at saka si Mr. Abella are so willing and they're very brave enough to face magharap-harapan sila.
Ang taong bayan ay frustrated. Talagang na-frustrate ang mamamayan sapagkat regardless kung SMNI o hindi, ang prosesong ito ay tinitingnan natin as an objective process sa pagpipili ng desisyon ng mga taong bayan. So ang hindi pagdalo ng ilang mga tumanggi na talaga openly like Leni Robredo, Ping Lacson and Manny Pacquiao as presidential aspirants, ang kanilang pinostrate, yung kanilang pinot down sa kanilang desisyon na yan na makitid at mababaw ay ang taong bayan. So it's also frustrating on our part sapagkat gusto naming marinig sana bilang mga dating rebelde at dating mga kadre, ano ang kanilang paninindigan tungkol sa mga seryosong usapin sa pangangailangan ng mamumuno sa pamahalaan. At pangalawa, sa tingin namin yung hindi nila pagdalo at ang kanilang pagtalikod sa pagrespeto sa taong bayan ay malaking kawalan ng proseso ng pagrespeto sa buong proseso ng demokratikong pagsusuri na naibibigay sana ng SMNI sa ganitong pagkakataon.
Of course, medyo nakakagulat din yung pag-atras ng ibang mga kandidato natin. Gayon pa man, yung what we call, yung sagutan sa social media ngayon, medyo magbabago ng direksyon. Kasi nung una, meron mga hashtags na hindi ka nais tungkol kay BBM with regard to him not showing up dun sa ibang mga interviews, di ba? So ngayon, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Yung mga patutsada noon against BBM for not showing up will now apply to everybody who doesn't go. So now medyo level na yung diskusyon. So, this is actually for me a good development. Hindi na magiging bogged down yung mga diskusyon dito sa maliliit na bagay about whether they go or whether they don't go. So, ngayon, pwede ng issues. Mas what it comes down to is we want to hear issues, we want to hear platforms, gusto natin kung ano yung mga plano ng ating mga kandidato, at saka yung iba dyan baka they have good ideas. So maganda rin yung naririnig, yung mga hindi madalas naririnig.
Hindi nga naman naging madali para sa mga tumatakbong kandidato ang pinagdaanan nila mula sa kamay ng mga magigiting at batikang political scientist at foreign relation expert, lawmaker at mga bihasa sa general knowledge. Mahigit na 4 na oras ding tumayo ang mga kandidato sa entablado na sumentro ang mga sagot nito sa iba't ibang paggawa ng polisiya, programa sa agrikultura, trabaho, edukasyon at kalusugan. Nauna nang tinanggihan ni Manila City Mayor Isko Moreno ang imbitasyon ng Smni. Nagsipag-atrasan din ang iba pang kandidato kagaya ni na VP Leni Robredo, Senator Smni Pacquiao at Ping Lacson. Habang hinangaan naman ang tapang ni Bongbong Marcos Jr., former Secretary of Defense Norberto Gonzales, former Foreign Affairs Secretary Ernesto Abella Jr. at Caliodi de Guzman dahil sa pagtugon nito sa hamon ng paglalatag ng maayos na plataporma ngayong halalan 2022.